1, 2, 3.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of my podcast. My name is Liza Whitehurst, and I am a graduate student at Westminster College who is passionate about all things org health, leadership, human development, company culture, you name it. I'm very excited about my guest on the podcast today. Not only is he a leader in various capacities, but he's also a dear friend. Isn't that right?
That's so right.
Welcome, Murray Watts, to the podcast today. How are you feeling?
Thanks, Liza. I appreciate it. I think hearing you intro yourself, it's like, man, that is the most people person description you could ever have. Organizational health, leadership, culture, people. I love it. I love that you take such an interest in people and want to dig into it and how to be better at leading people. So I'm super excited to talk today.
Wow, thank you. That's very kind. So to introduce Murray a little bit, Murray is an account executive at Route, one of the fastest growing tech companies in history. He's a member of the Pastoral Leadership Team at his church here in Salt Lake City, Utah. He is a former professional baseball player with the Kansas City Royals, and he was once offered his own radio talk show by ESPN, so he better be good at this.
That's right. That's right. What's the classic line? Have a face for radio. I think you'll post a video somewhere, but maybe people just listen and be like, oh, that is a great voice with a Southern twang, right?
Southern twang. Where is your Southern accent hail from?
So I'm originally from Northeast Arkansas, a city called Jonesboro, but I've been in Salt Lake City going on 6 years. But I'm sure at some point in here, you'll hear something I say be really weird and sound really country, but that's all right. That's part of me.
Right. That's who you are. It's who you are. Now I'm starting to talk like that.
That's right. It'll rub off.
All right. So with Murray's vast resume and breadth of experiences, he has had the privilege to witness several types of leaders and leadership styles. So today on the podcast, we're going to talk about leadership and the 3 qualities that Murray thinks makes a healthy and successful leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first of all, why do you think you have maybe the authority to talk about leadership?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think part of it is, I don't know that I have authority in it to speak too in depth about it, but I have, kind of like you mentioned, been around a ton of different leaders, a ton of different leadership styles. And I think from my experience, I have a pretty good grasp on what works, what doesn't really work. And I don't think it's all based on personality. I think they're actually qualities that you can grow in and learn and actually become a better leader. It's not like a natural gifting that somebody's necessarily born with that doesn't get any better.
Oh, that's interesting. I think I hear a lot of people say, they're just a natural leader. They're a natural born leader. Sometimes people might not have that natural innate gifting, and it's just hard work and qualities that they develop over time. So
yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of both of those, where there is some natural giftings that go into being a leader. Even like as I look back at my own life, whether I like it or not, you can't see on the video here, but I'm 6'7", I'm a really large man. And I think with that, there's a physical presence that would bring some authority, would bring leadership. People look to you in the physical, so to speak, of like, okay, this guy's bigger, maybe he can lead us. So I think there's definitely like the natural giftings, but that's not the end all be all. And it's definitely not going to bring a successful team together by just being bigger than somebody or being more charismatic than somebody. I don't think that's actually how you have a winning team.
All right. Well, should we just jump into the first trait that you believe defines a healthy and successful leader? And that trait is empathy.
Oh, I didn't know. Are you waiting on me to say it?
That's okay.
I thought you were doing the intro. I'm like, oh, hey, let's go for it.
No, let's just jump in. So trait number 1, I asked you ahead of time for the your top 3 traits that you believe define a healthy and successful leader, and your first trait was empathy. So how do you define empathy?
Yeah, I would say when I think about empathy, it's not feeling bad to about someone or about their situation, but empathy is connecting with people like they're actually people. So my background is sports. I grew up playing sports, and I think there are very different coaching styles and leadership styles that were empathetic and non-empathetic. And I think in the moment, I probably couldn't even verbalize what those were or how they were different. But as I look back, the teams that thrived, and me personally, that the times that I was thriving were with empathetic coaches that saw me as not Murray, the baseball player, but Murray, the baseball player that has a family, that has a wife, that has kids, that has all these things that are going on outside of the batter's box and outside of the field, and more like a holistic person. So I think that was my first realization of like what makes a good leader. And it was looking at times where I really thrived in the things that I was doing. And actually the first example, as I was sending you the list that came to mind, was one of my college baseball coaches who really exemplified that to a T.
How so?
Yeah, so I actually, out of high school, I went to one school. I went to the University of Arkansas to play baseball, and it was a great program. All of these things, the leadership it didn't lead with empathy. And then when I went to Arkansas State, Tommy Raffo is the coach then. He's still there now, but for him, you would sit in his office, and it wasn't always like, "Hey, put your hands here in the swing," or "Do this," or "Do that with your feet." It was never any of that. It was always, "Hey, how are you doing? What's going on with school? What's going on with relationships? How are your parents? How do you feel about these things?" That was always how the conversation started. And then, of course, there was, "Hey, tactically, you need to get better at this. Hey, your performance here is not very good." But he had a place of authority and leadership to say those really hard things, potentially, that were really hard, because he had the empathy beforehand to make that connection.
Oh, that's great. That's really special. I love the examples that you're using with coaching, but I feel like in this day and age, in a maybe post COVID world, with culture shifting drastically and dramatically, with a lot of people working from home, empathy is a critical trait in a leader nowadays, especially when people are trying to work from home with families at home, with homeschooling at home. Can you talk on empathy in business today and in company culture, and how you've seen that kind of change over time, especially over the last year?
Yeah. I mean, even our interaction before this started, we talked like, "Hey, my husband, Drew is mowing the yard." I said, "Oh, hey, my kids are playing. They're outside. You may hear them scream. Like, let's just be aware of that." So that's changed because I'm in my home office / homeschool room / piano room / all of these things, because I'm not working out of an office. And I've seen it change drastically, especially where I am in the tech industry. Before, Zoom calls were kind of wonky. Somebody would have their video on, somebody wouldn't. They'd be muted the whole time, really worried about background noise or somebody interrupting or doing something like that. And now every Zoom call I'm on, people have their videos on, and it's like, "Hey, this is my house. Like, I still have stuff on the table. Like, I didn't clean it. My kids might walk in. There might be some distractions," but it's in a way more engaging. People are more understanding of the situation that everybody's going through. They get it. They know, really, even from a leadership perspective to their teams, that, hey, just because there's things going on in the background, or there's people at their house, or there's kids that they're helping with homeschool in the same room, it doesn't change the productivity of your team. And people can still do things really well in a new environment. But honestly, when I look back, it was a hard shift for a lot of leaders when COVID hit. you couldn't rah your team anymore in a conference room, right? You
Mhm.
couldn't get everybody together and take them out to lunch and give them this great speech or really encourage them that way. And so there had to be different things, and you had to really put yourself in the shoes of your team of what are they experiencing and how can I then have empathy to break down the roadblocks of what will get in our way of doing what we need to do.
Cool. That's great. So recently you told me a story about one of your leaders who showed really great empathy and kindness towards you. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you want to share that?
Yeah. I think you touched on something mixed with COVID, how it's been so different and so difficult. For me personally and my family, we went through a really hard time at the end of last year. My dad got COVID. They live in Arkansas. He was in the hospital for 30 days. And during that time, it's our biggest time of year at work. Like that is like Q4, end of the year, like let's produce, we got to produce. But during that time, I wanted to be with my dad. He was in Arkansas, we're in Utah. We went back for 6 weeks of that time. And my dad actually ended up passing away, which was super, super sad and not something we expected, didn't know how to deal with it. We had some things at my house happen. Our basement flooded 3 times while we were gone, which is wild. The transmission in our car went out. The battery in our other car went out. It's like all these things happened. And my team at Route heard, and it's always kind of one of those weird situations where like, you work with people and you may or may not know them personally. But I saw empathy really play a huge role in our team, because out of nowhere, I just started getting Venmos of like $20, $100, $200. And like within 3 hours or $1,400 in Venmo, and then like 250 in DoorDash gift cards, just for people I work with that happened to hear about what was going on. And the message was like, hey, we don't really know what we can do. Like, we're so sorry. Here's some extra cash. We don't know what else to do. And the leader who kind of rallied the troops, so to speak, showed incredible empathy of like, man, I can't imagine the stress you're going through with your family, but we also know you really want to do excellent work. And so that's probably weighing on you too. We want you to know everything's okay. And don't worry about quota. Don't worry about bringing in revenue. Like there are bigger things, like the company will survive. We want to take care of you personally because we want you to be a part of this team for years to come. And this is part of that.
That story touched me when you told me. So I hope it touches somebody else. That's really, really sweet. Yeah. It's a great way to wrap up our first point and go into our second point. And our second trait in a healthy and successful leader, according to Murray, is candor. So Murray, what do you mean by candor?
Yeah. And some of the listeners may be really familiar with this. There's a great book called Radical Candor that this kind of comes from, but you have to start with empathy. That's step one, but you start from that place of empathy. And then from there, you're able to challenge people directly. And it's a really open dialogue because again, people know that you care about them. They know that you're going to speak truth to them. You're going to challenge them directly. And they also actually have the ability to come back to you and challenge you in ways and be honest with you and tell you the truth. Because ultimately, once you have the established empathy, you're working towards the same goal and you both want to win, whatever it is. If it's at Route in my day job where it's like, man, let's generate revenue, let's help these clients, let's do the things we want to do. We're on the same journey. If it's in church world where it's at Antioch, it's a pastoral leadership team, like we're all driving towards the same goal, but you can't challenge people directly until you've shown empathy, that you know that they're not a chess piece, that you're just moving around a board to accomplish some goal that you want. And so I think candor has to be the second piece of a great leader, because if you're just really empathetic, obviously you just don't get anything done. You're happy, everybody likes you, but your organization or your team becomes really stagnant.
Yeah, first thing I thought of when I saw that was Pat Lencioni's book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. When two of the dysfunctions of a team, he says, are the absence of trust and avoiding conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is true?
Absolutely. I mean, he sold a lot of those copies of that book for a reason, right? I mean, those things are critical to the health of your team, because this will kind of get us into our third point, but being able to challenge people happens when you cast really good vision, right? If the people don't have vision, they're going to perish. They're going to die out. Your team burns out. You don't accomplish the goals that you've set out to accomplish. So I think that's spot on for sure.
How have you seen leaders in your past experience show really great or really poor candor?
Yeah, I've seen a mix of both, which I think is to be expected. Which maybe this is a different podcast. Maybe you'll have me back someday. But how to respond to leaders that aren't using candor, because I think that's a critical piece of the team too. Because not every leader's going to do this well all the time or perfectly, obviously. But I think back to times when it's done really well. It's actually spurred me to produce more and actually, in a weird way, be more bought in to what I'm going for. Because I think deep down, all of us, we want to be challenged. Like we want not just the mundane, not the same old, same old. We actually don't want to struggle either. Nobody wants to be bad at their job. Nobody wants to be mediocre, right? Like we all want to be really excellent at what we do. And so without candor, you may not even know the expectations. And then if you don't have candor, but you do know the expectations, you're not going to know if you're hitting them or not, or how to get better, or any of those really honest conversations that need to happen to help you hit your goals as an individual contributor. And then as the team, you're not going to know when you're missing the mark or where you are and how to get better. Because hopefully your leaders are in a position they're in because they've done it before, they have great experience, and they can share all these things to make you successful. So a long-winded answer, Eliza, that candor actually really matters. And when it's done well, it produces high-performing teams.
Cool. Well said. Well, you hinted at it, our third topic, but our third trait to make a healthy and successful leader is vision casting. So take it away.
Yeah. So I think the building blocks, as I've kind of laid it out in my mind, the empathy into candor into vision casting. Because I think ultimately this maybe I have the order reversed, right? Maybe vision casting should be number one, to get people bought in to even what you're doing at a high level. But the best leaders that I've been around, and what I strive to do on teams that I lead, is to cast vision really well, to be very clear about what we want as a team, why we're in business, why we organize as a church, why we do these things. And so people are very clear on why we're doing it, and then how I think we're going to do it, and then when we should accomplish these things. I think those are critical pieces in vision casting to get people bought in to what the rest of the team's doing and what you want. Because ultimately, as a leader, well, I mean, you're not a leader unless you're leading people, right? And if you can't get people vision, you're not leading anybody.
So that means as a leader, you need to be bought into what you're leading.
Yeah, you're hitting on something pretty critical there too, right? Because it ultimately, like, as you go up the ladder of leading, there will be people casting vision for you. And so you need to also be bought into that vision. Even if you're the CEO of a company, there's probably some driving force behind you, even though you may not have a direct report above you. There's a driving force of vision that you're buying into that is being given to you by somebody else outside of your organization. It's a passion deep within you that you probably got from somewhere. And so you're right, you've got to be bought in to your own vision as you start to cast vision to others.
So practically, super practically speaking, how would a leader, if the whole casting vision concept is foreign to them, how would they go about starting to cast vision? Does it look like daily pep talks, or does it look like, taking time before meetings, or do you have any practicals on how to cast vision? Is it an email signature with an inspirational quote?
It may be, maybe it is, but at least what I've seen from my experience and the way you phrased the question was somebody that may be unfamiliar with leading and vision casting. So to me, that tells me they're probably lower on the totem pole, so to speak, in an organization, right? They're not the CEO, they're not a vice president, they're not the lead pastor or whoever they are, right? And so in that situation, your vision is probably going to be slightly different than the overall organization's vision. And so what I would do is look at, okay, what is the organization doing? I think the easy example here is Route, right? Route, we have a mission to help e-commerce businesses with their customer experience and their post-purchase experience on their websites. That's the broad vision of Route, which is great. I love it. That's awesome. But on the sales team, like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how do I operate in my day-to-day job? Like, that doesn't help me any, right? So as a leader of a team that's not at the top of the pecking order, you have to find the vision that surrounds what your metrics are. So on the sales team, I need vision around why I'm doing the day-to-day tasks that I'm doing. Why am I picking up the phone and cold calling people? Why am I sending emails to people? Why am I doing demos? Why do I have to do these things? I don't like doing it. Liza, you're probably like me and most of the listeners, you don't wake up in the morning thinking, I can't wait to call 40 people I don't know out of the blue and have to explain to them they need this thing that I have. Nobody really dreams about that, right? Like, that's not super fun. But because I have vision for the goals that I've set personally, for the goals as a team, I do those things, right? I do the hard things. And you'll probably give me a little ribbing here for this, but in our house, we say the Watts do hard things, right? And that's because we have a vision of what we want our family to be. And I carry that over into work, and all the things I'm involved with that I help lead is the Watts do hard things. Murray does hard things because I know the vision.
That was actually going to be my next question, was, as the leader in your family, I can imagine how you would exercise empathy and candor, but I was going to ask if you had a vision statement or how you cast vision for your family. You kind of just touched on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as I'm growing as a dad and a husband and all those things, like, we would love to be at a place where if you took each one of our individual kids away from us and you said, hey, what's it mean to be a Watts, right? That they would all have a really similar answer. And our kids are young, like, we're working towards it, but there are definitely values and vision that we want for our family that we write down, that we talk about, that we practice as a family together. So it's almost ingrained in them. They have very clear ideas of who they are.
And ingrained in your friends, which isn't a bad thing. I think that's really awesome. I think if you were to ask Drew and I, what is the Watts vision statement, we would say the Watts do hard things, and they work from rest.
Yeah, those are two, like, pillars of the Watts family for sure. Like, if you don't get anything else as a 6-year-old, my oldest is 6. Like, if you don't get anything else as a 6-year-old, I want you to know that you can do hard things, and that we take very seriously both rest but also work. When we say, like, we work from rest, we want to be excellent workers, and to do that, like, you have to be all in and rested and recharged and all those things that go into being a really excellent worker.
Cool. Well, there you have it, the 3 traits of leadership according to Murray Watts: empathy, candor, and vision casting. And I like your little model of empathy, candor, then vision casting. So that's the secret recipe.
Feels like you're wrapping us up here. I'm impressed you've gotten me to stop talking so much, but
we're not done yet.
Oh, okay.
Next,
Okay, good.
next is my second favorite part of the whole podcast, and it's my fake sponsorships.
Mm,
So if anyone's been listening, they should know by now I'm a big fan of Pat Lencioni and his group.
I've heard that. I've heard that.
His group, the Table Group. I'm a big fan of their podcast, At the Table, and they're not sponsored. So they kind of do their own sponsorships. I know this is a shock probably, but I'm not sponsored. So,
Yet.
so yet,
Yeah.
sure. So now it's your turn to sponsor a product. So what do you have for us today? Or
That's a
two, if
really,
you have two.
I've got two. We talked a little bit about working from home in the COVID area. We talked a little bit about one of them before we started recording. The first is a mechanical keyboard. You looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. I love it. If you're typing and working from home, it's going to have a great feel for your fingers. And let me see if you can hear this. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
It gives that great sound. It's perfect for working from home. Don't recommend it in the office. You might last like 6 minutes before they kick you out. So that's my first recommendation, a mechanical keyboard.
Okay.
The second, I'm sorry for you podcast listeners, if you catch the video, maybe you'll notice I have an HD webcam that I got off of Amazon, and it's amazing. It's a game changer. Working from home, you have a great camera that makes you look hopefully a little better, and your bald head really shiny.
Yes. I'm not that big league yet. I just use my camera and my laptop.
What are
Okay.
your products to sponsor for today?
My products to sponsor today. I would like to sponsor Leatherman's. So when I graduated high school, as one of my graduation gifts was a Leatherman, and I still have it to this day. And it's just so many functions and so many uses. And
Can you explain to our listeners what a Leatherman is?
well, if you don't know what I'm kidding. So Leatherman is a multi-use tool. Think a pocket knife of various uses. Mine's got like 2 saws on it, a file, pliers, wire cutters, a pocket knife. And I think when I got it, 18-year-old Liza was like, this is so stupid. When will I ever use this? But I use it all the time. And so big shout out to Leatherman's.
Love it.
And I don't know if I have a second thing to sponsor. Yeah, we might just leave it at Leatherman's today.
Okay.
I try and do that. The first thing that comes to my mind that seems far more organic and far more real than something I try and convolute and dream up. So there's that. Okay, Murray, I know.
Our next sponsor is Nalgene from Keeping Our Bodies Hydrated.
There we go. Get this. Nalgene, please get me a fancy webcam, HD, please.
Yes.
So before we wrap things up, Murray, let our listeners know where they can find you on the
internet. They can find me a couple different places. LinkedIn for more professional type posts. That'll be the link in the description, as Liza points at that, hopefully, as well as Instagram. If you want really well curated pictures of my kids, I promise there'll only be curated images of them looking really happy. That link will also be in the description.
I feel really bad just because I know your family. I didn't give them any sort of shout out or a chance for you to share about your family at the beginning. So do you want to give a quick little snippet of your family, because they are the best?
They are the best. Been married, it'll be 10 years this year to my wife, Lakin. We met in Arkansas. And we have 3 little kiddos. We have Mac, who is 6, Sam, who is 5, and Luca, who is 3, who a lot of times thinks she runs our household, and she doesn't, but that's okay. We have an awesome family. It's super fun raising 2 little boys and a girl. All their personalities are, it seems like, opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's challenging. It's really hard. but it's super fun all at the same time.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Murray, for being on the podcast today. I hope our listeners got a better sense of healthy leadership and can kind of take your practicals and put them into practice. And yeah, I'm just grateful for your leadership in my life and your friendship. And I just think you're the best. So thanks for being on today.
Awesome. Thanks, Liza. Any compliments can go to me. If you have any criticisms, it's lizawhitehurst@gmail.com.
That's not my email address, so hot. That's on you. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye. Allow you to sponsor hey.
We're going to edit this part out? Or?
Yes. I was hoping you would wait outside. Well, empathy. Maybe we shouldn't edit it out because it's literally what you were talking about. It'll be my blooper at the end.